Hello everyone. Just finished painting these few figures before you here. Normally I would have put these in my Crimean War playlist because they are a few more Eureka figures that I painted up from their Crimean War range. I say normally I would put them in my Crimean War list, but I'm going to put them in my general wargaming list instead today because I wanted to sort of expand the conversation a little bit. And as you probably tell from the title, I am going to have to mention the B word, Brexit, quite a few times. Not to be provocative or anything, I just wanted to discuss a little bit the changes and the effects of Brexit that I'm noticing already within the wargaming hobby. I mean, obviously not an important factor when discussing such a serious issue, and regular long-term viewers of my channel will already know my my own opinions on the question of Brexit, but I'm going to try and keep all that out of the discussion and just talk about the practical effects that everyone in the hobby is already noticing, that have taken place as a result of the ongoing and painful Brexit dilemma. Not very much progress on the Crimean War. I'm going to knuckle down and get quite a lot more of it done this year, but this is all I've succeeded in doing in the last sort of so far this year in terms of the Crimean War. So there are 2 horse artillery pieces and 2 foot artillery pieces for the British Army. It's proving a little bit. I don't know how to put this, but it is. The more I get into this project, the more looking into the future, the more problems I have. I mean, I've already had conversations with you in the past about Eureka's lack of limbers, and a lot of you have suggested other possible replacements, such as Old Glory or Blue Moon's Napoleonic ranges. I sort of thought about that. I've purchased some Blue Moon figures, and to me they don't look as large, they don't look the same scale as these Eureka figures. I suspect that might be because there isn't a consistency in their ranges, and sometimes they're described as 15mm, sometimes 18mm, so it's possible that their Napoleonic limbers might be larger than the figures that I've got, a larger scale. I just don't know, but I've decided now what I'm going to do is the sort of slightly unsatisfactory solution of just wargaming with these models and not bothering about limbers. And if I want to represent them as limbered, I'll either use a token or I'll turn them around, something like that, so that I don't have to worry. I mean, to be honest, I've got four cannon here that will need limbers. I've already got something like 8, maybe even more Russian pieces. I mean, that's 12 limbers and horse teams I'm already obliged to paint if I do go down that route. And I find of all the things that I really find tedious to paint, it's limbers. There's just so much on them to paint, you know, probably 4 horses per team, sometimes 6, sometimes you can cut it down to 2, but awful lot of tedious painting to do. So that's another thing that's beginning to weigh on my mind. And then a long way in the future is another kind of inadequacy of the Eureka range, really, which is for the British Army in particular, all they have are these 6-pounder guns. They don't have anything heavier. For the Russians, they have a howitzer, but again, they only have a light cannon other than that. And that means that the range is missing a lot of the artillery pieces that were that did exist during the Crimean conflict. In particular, all the weapons that they had, the Russians had in the siege lines, and the weapons that the British had as well in the siege lines, such as mortars and heavier pieces, naval guns that were taken off the ships on both sides. So I've been wondering what to do about that. I mean, first of all, I've got to get a Russian army painted, and my preliminary goal is to recreate the scenario in the original Black Powder rulebook, which is really a take on the Battle of the Alma. So I haven't got to worry about it for a long time, but it does kind of, I do sort of try and plan a long way in advance. And I think it was 2 years ago at Salute, I did buy a lot of gabions and defensive pieces that I'm going to be able to paint up and convert into siege lines. So then, of course, when I get to that point, I've then got to think of where on earth I'm going to get guns from to put into them. So I've decided my long-term solution for that is I've acquired quite a few of these pieces from Freycorps. Now these are 15mm. Freycorps are quite small, and they're from the American Civil War range. The American Civil War was about 10 years after the Crimean War, slightly less than that. So some of the older pieces that were used in the American Civil War wouldn't be out of place in the Crimean War. Things like these mortars and so on. I think these are Cohorn mortars. But they are a little bit on the small side. But then again, the defence works that I've purchased are on the small side as well, because they're 15mm. So they're not going to look out of place in if I paint these up and put them behind 15mm fortifications. So that would then do me for the American Civil War and for the Crimean War. If I paint up a nice little template with defensive works on it, it would do just as well for the American Civil War. I won't show you today, I'll probably show you a long time in the future, but many years ago I did model a really impressive looking, well, I think it looks good, and I've had received compliments from others in the past about it, but a really big area of defensive lines for the American Civil War. It's really spent my time doing it, and it looks great. So I could then use the one that I'm going to do for the Crimean War alongside that one as well. So that all makes sense. And I apart from these figures, I have also painted up a lot more, or about 8 more, Russian artillery crew. They're going to look slightly large, maybe not, I don't know. And they're not really carrying the right sort of equipment and implements and so on. But they'll have to do, because there aren't any figures in the Eureka range portraying them carrying large rounds of ammunition or anything like that, or the larger ramrods and trail spikes and that kind of thing that they would have used. Similar to the what were they? Strelitz, I think, figures that I showed you. I put in a video a few months ago now, in a larger scale, 20mm that I painted up, similar to that. So there we go. That's my kind of that's the direction I'm heading in now. Something else that is really beginning to kind of have an impact now is planning how I'm going to get hold of more Eureka figures to paint up. Before I talk about that, let me talk a little bit about these figures as well. Like a lot of the previous Eureka figures I've shown you, they're lovely figures. I really like them. But there are certain errors in the sculpts and so on. And it has caused me to actually deliberately paint these up a little bit inaccurately. I won't be able to zoom in enough to actually show you what I mean. But in particular, the foot artillery, some of them have the correct cuffs and some of them have the sort of triangular cuffs on them, whereas in fact they were straight collars with a slash in them. So I've had to sort of paint those up as they are on the sculpt rather than as they were. And also I've painted them all with a sort of yellow bullion and yellow laces. Haven't bothered to paint the officer with gold. And that is because, as far as I'm aware, the foot artillery figures shouldn't have the epaulets with the bullion on them unless they're portraying figures of the rank of sergeant or higher. And if that were the case, that would then be gold bullion. But all these figures have got bullion on their, what do you call them, like epaulets or shoulder straps or whatever. So I've deliberately painted them all in yellow because it wouldn't look right to have them all in gold, because that would give the impression that they were all of a higher rank, officer or sergeant. And then that's had a kind of knock-on effect to here, where the one officer figure, which I think is this chap here, I've given him yellow cords rather than gold cords. Doesn't you know, at a distance you don't really notice it anyway. And I was kind of half kind of obliged to make that error because of the way there's an error in the sculpts on these ones. So it's sort of a lazy solution really, and I think they've turned out all right. The other thing you'll notice, so this is where it's now going to get me onto the subject of Brexit. As I mentioned in another earlier video, I've run out of Tester's dull coat. Can't find it anywhere now. So you may pick up that there's a little bit more of a sheen on these because I've had to use Army Painter matte varnish on them. I really like Tester's dull coat because it completely hides that that sheen. To me, this is more of a satin varnish than a matte varnish. Tester's dull coat to me is the only product I know of that actually does produce a genuine matte finish. Now I'm not confident in this, but I'm very suspicious that the absence of Tester's dull coat on the market has got something to do with uncertainties in our future kind of trading relationships with Europe and the rest of the world at the moment. And because all the Tester's dull coat that I used to be able to get always had a Spanish kind of labelling and packaging on it, even though it was sold in the UK. And EU regulations did force Tester's to change the formula of the product some time ago. So now, if you look on the internet and on Amazon, you can still purchase Tester's dull coat, but only obtain it from America. So I think I'm going to end up doing that. I'll just leave it maybe another couple of months or so to see if things settle down and Testers does reappear in the market in Europe, and in particular in the UK. If it reappears in Spain, and then there's some kind of charge or tariff to import it into Britain, then I may as well get it from the US. Postage won't be that much different. So that's one thing that I've noticed. Now, another thing that is definitely impacting on these figures, this range in particular, is Eureka are an Australian company, but you can purchase their figures through Fighting 15s in the UK. So these are the last British figures that I have in my lead mountain to paint. So I had to submit a further order to Fighting 15s in order to kind of complete my British Army. You get an automatic response from them when you place an order online, and I forget his last name, but it's a chap called Ian at Fighting 15s, and he's left this comment that he's a little bit behind in his processing of the orders because he's had a run on his figures, and the reason that has happened is that a lot of wargamers on the continent have submitted orders to him in a panic because they're not sure of what price they are going to have to pay or the availability once Britain has left the EU and there's a potential tariff imposed on transferring the Australian figures from the UK into Europe. So he's noticing he's running out of stock rapidly, and he couldn't guarantee that he could fulfill any orders that were placed, and there was going to be a delay whilst he processed the orders and let people know. So I placed an order with him sometime last week and got a reply over the last couple of days. I think it was on Monday I received a reply from him saying that he couldn't meet my order, and did I want to cancel the order or just receive a partial refund and the figures that he could supply. So I said, oh, I'll have a partial refund and just send me the figures that you got. But the thing that really puzzles me about his attitude is that he is not, he is no longer, or temporarily, he has suspended replenishing his stocks from Australia. And the reason he's given for that is uncertainties in the price that he's going to have to pay, the cost of doing it, because he doesn't know future kind of trading arrangements with countries outside of the EU. Now, to me, that is absolutely daft. I've gone to Eureka. I've now purchased. They are quite happy still to trade, still to post figures from Australia, and sell them to British customers. But they can't do that through Fighting 15s any longer because Ian is digging his heels in and not placing any orders with them. So you have to order them from Eureka direct. Unfortunately, I've just missed the cutoff. Eureka are going to be attending Salute in a month's time at Excel in London, and they hadn't had a notice on their website that you could order figures from them, and they would bring them to Salute, so you wouldn't have to pay the postage. But unfortunately, I would have been in time to do that had I heard earlier from Ian that he's not able to fulfil my order, but the cut-off was 4 days ago. So I've missed out on it now. And Eureka say sorry, but they have been, in turn, sort of deluged with orders, and they can't deal with any more. They can't. So that even though I did ask if I could order after the cut-off date, and they apologised and said no, but they were happy to send them to me through the post later. So that in itself is a reflection on the way kind of Brexit has caused people to panic and so on, and to try and catch the end of March deadline, which now looks as though it's going to be postponed anyway. So another aspect of Brexit that is impacting on our hobby. I know it's not a very weighty matter in the whole Brexit kind of spectrum, but just I wondered if other people out there are experiencing these kind of issues at the moment. I must admit I'm guilty of it myself. That I do like the range of War Colours paints who are based in Cyprus, and I thought at the end of last year, I better put another order in from them in case the prices go up or it's more difficult to get the paints come the end of March. So I did that. So I'm kind of contributing to that panic buying kind of culture myself. But it does strike me, Fighting 15's attitude in particular does strike me as slightly ridiculous, because all they have to do is carry on as normal, and the price might alter, but they just pass that price on to the customer, surely. They're purchasing them and having to convert the currency from pounds sterling to Australian pounds. There's going to be fluctuations in the exchange rate anyway, so there are going to be small changes in the cost, which they can they would happily pass on to the customer. Begs the question whether Eureka will actually be cheaper once we have different trading arrangements, because the EU has a kind of exterior tariff wall, meaning that goods are often more expensive to bring into the EU, of which Britain was a part, because it has to pass over that tariff wall. So it's quite possible that if Fighting 15's carried on acquiring Eureka's figures, they would actually get them at a lower price, and then potentially be able to reduce the price to their customers. It just seems the worst possible decision to me, to actually abruptly stop supplying Eureka figures in the UK simply because of this sort of nebulous area of what the price will actually be. Doesn't matter, the price is the price, and these are luxury goods, they're not essential items. So people are going to, if you're buying a luxury good, you're going to pay the price that's necessary to get it. You're not going to be forced to pay it because your life itself exists on it, relies on it. And what Fighting 15's have actually done is removed all the figures that they are now out of stock. They haven't put out of stock on their website. They've actually removed the caption entirely from the website, as though they have ceased dealing in the product. So whether they're just going to run their stock down and then not have any more Eureka figures, I just don't know. But that has this knock-on effect to me, that to me personally, that I have gone down. I can't turn around and go back now. I have gone down this Eureka road for my Crimean War project. There's no other range in the world as I was saying earlier about the Limbers, that is compatible with this range. It's a very unique size, so it looks unfortunate, but I'm going to have to purchase them direct from Eureka in the future, and they are perfectly happy. You know, there's absolutely no hitch or hindrance in doing that. So make of that what you will, but I just find the kind of whiny kind of attitude that people like Fighting 15s have adopted really really strange. You know, just get on with it and carry on as normal, and the prices are going to change. They may go up, they may go down, we don't know, but I'm, you know, I as a customer will deal with that price change. And yeah, I think that's not so much a rant, it's more a kind of observation really on you know, sort of wargamers, the effect on wargaming of Brexit. I mean, another thing that another outside of the UK company that I do get figures from is Wargamer Poland, which is the opposite. They are obviously Poland is inside the EU. What changes is that going to have on my purchases from them when Britain leaves the EU? I mentioned that Eureka is going to be at Salute. I was looking at the list of traders for Salute, and I didn't notice Wargamer Poland for quite a while, but I noticed that they were on the list when I've just had a look today. So whether I overlooked their name or not, I don't know, or whether they have left it to the last minute to decide whether they're going to appear at Salute. I don't know, but they're certainly there now. So they've made their mind up to come. But again, you know, why hesitate? They make so much money. I mean, I was at the Wargamer Poland stand at Salute very early on, about 2 years ago, and people were handing money over fist to them to buy their products. So yeah, they may have had hold-ups at the border. Yes, they may have, you know, had to pay a little bit more in customs fees or so on to drive across the channel in their van and turn up at Salute. But the amount of money they made there or make there would surely have offset that. But anyway, that is now. I have finished ranting, and I'll see you again on the next video. Bye for now.